Okay, welcome Dr. Gayathri D. Naik from National Law School of India University to the 16th International Residential School on Economic, Social and Development Rights. So today Gayatri took two long sessions on international environmental law and socio-economic rights related to environment. Recently, she also published a book on. Please tell me the title and details about your book. I think we should hear from you now.
Yeah, the book, it's titled Water Justice and Groundwater Subsidies in India, Equitable and Sustainable Access and Regulation. This book is published by Routledge. This book is a culmination of my PhD thesis, which is converted into a monograph. My PhD thesis submitted to the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, examined the impacts and implications of water-related subsidies in the access and allocation of groundwater in India, and how it is it actually contributing to the equity and inclusiveness in its access and regulation, or is it not? So that was the question there. So this book examines in the context of two case studies, that is particularly one state called Rajasthan, which is the most arid state, and another state, Kerala, one of the wettest states. So how it is, is it having a sort of some similarities in implementation, or is it completely a diverse way? So this book uses a theoretical framework of water justice, inspired from the environmental justice aspect, to see whether we are actually contributing the current regulatory framework and the policy framework with respect to both groundwater regulation and the subsidy framework leads to this equity and inclusiveness in groundwater access and allocation. One aspect, and the second one, using that water justice framework itself, I try to examine whether are we trying to ensure an ecological justice perspective, or if not, what could we do to ensure that, to balance both the human right to water and the water for nature. So this is how the book works.
So, can you even in the class you were talking about socio-economic justice, equity, and those things to water rights. Can you throw some more light on that aspect? Like you talked to me about the caste issues,
Yes.
and those that you discovered, even in a developed kind of state like Kerala, and your comparative study with Rajasthan. Can you throw some?
Yeah, so like we discussed in the class also, the socio-economic rights developed from that ICESCR, that was how somewhere, even in the international law and the domestic law context, it received a very limited attention to an extent. Until some time, let's say like that. So in Indian context, the socio-economic rights like water, environment, food, or let's say sanitation, these types of rights, which were part of socio-economic rights, received mainstream attention when the courts slowly started giving a harmonious approach towards the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy. So when they had this harmonious interpretation after the judicial activist role being played by the judiciary, this slow movement, not slow movement, but in the sense the reading of socio-economic rights as something essential or a part of the cultural and political and social, civil and political rights, which is reflected through part 3, fundamental rights, led to a harmonious interpretation of many human rights. Right, for instance, water. So water never received that much attention. If you look into the UDHR and ICCPR or the ICECR, we cannot see water, but we can see food as a human right. Maybe the historical context might have contributed to it, and at the time when this were drafted, water was plenty and water was not an issue. But due to the after effects of war, food was always an issue. So that may be one of the reasons why they have not covered. But in Indian context, since this 1980s, when judiciary was activist in its role, like other human rights, water was also carved as a human right under Article 21 right to life, as something essential to enjoy the right to life, or as an integral part of right to life. So yeah, So this interpretation of water as a human right, essential for right to life, gave it like a mainstream attention. And if you look into the contribution of judiciary, slowly this received a duty-based approach also. Like a right-based rights-duty paradigm was carved from this Article 21, fundamental rights. And the duty vests upon the state to take positive measures to help the citizens to realize, right? So this being the mainstream discourse or right-based discourse in India, if you look into the practical reality at the implementation phase, this is not the case. The mainstream legal discourse always focuses on right-based approach, as if we are arguing that water is a human right or a fundamental right, and the state, of course, it has. So the idea basically which drives this is about equality of access and allocation. But if you look into the ground reality that we realized during my field work in Rajasthan and Kerala, equality will not always work in that way we try to envisage it. We should focus on equity because we have socio-economic differences, particularly the caste-based discrimination, which is still rampant. We have reports coming up, right? Dalits being, yes, news reports, Dalits being discriminated. So in that aspect, my question was, where is this concept of equity being addressed in the legal discourse on water or right to water? Unfortunately, none of the water-based schemes, the supply schemes, or any of the judicial decisions that highlight right to water tries to cover this equity element, which has been covered by many scholars, that is non-law scholars. So my argument was, when we try to address this law or the legal aspect of right to water, we should also go beyond this concept of equality to address the issues of equity and inclusiveness caused by the social, economic and the political factors. Now, if you ask me like what is the role of political factors, from my work I try to understand that. One example, there was once an incident that happened in Kerala called Plachimada incident, and that was in around 2002, right? So at that time there was no groundwater legislation in the state to control it. Of course, let it be. But soon after that, the then ministry brought up with an idea of water supply scheme supported by the Japan aid. So it's a Japan aided program. Japan Development Agency supported it. International JIDA supported it. And in Kerala it's known as Japan Water Supply. So there, if you look into the constituencies where it was first implemented, if I'm not wrong, it was around 10 or 12 constituencies. And to go back to check or dig into the history, you can see those constituencies were represented by the Congress members. And at that time, the ministry was led by the Congress, as a Congress ministry, which included many towns and areas which never had that much rampant water issue like that of Plachimada, which faced a huge water crisis. So the politics determines the beneficiaries as well as the areas of implementation. So,
and those were like the tribal people, right?
Yes.
Who are most affected by these and the most affected, so we can connect it to the equity and those kind of issues that you're talking about. Like, what was the inspiration, to write a thesis on this area? Because whenever we either pursue PhD, my belief is that the topic should be something that is very close to us, so that in future we write books based on that. Because we have to study for like 3 years, 4 years on the same topic. So once we are not interested on that topic, we'll not be able to write a thesis itself. So a topic should be very close to your heart, rather than how much you are able to read on that, work on that, becomes the secondary aspect to it.
Right.
The first aspect is your interest, or there should be some inspiration to write on that topic. Why did you choose that particular topic on water justice? Like, was there an inspiring story behind it?
If you ask me, like, there's no particular inspiring story behind it, but I would like to say, when I wrote my LLM dissertation in South Asian University, I was particularly interested in environmental law, and I wanted to work on environmental law. And after discussing with my mentor professor, Dr. Stelina, she suggested that water would be a very good area to research on. From that inspiration, I started working on whether I could do something on water, and I found groundwater to be an interesting area. So that led me to write a dissertation at that time on groundwater. That dissertation and the writing, that phase, led me to get a contact with Professor Philippe Coulet, again under the inspiration of Dr. Stelina only. That's why I always mention her as my mentor. So she inspired me to contact him to have a discussion about this water, because he was one of the water law experts. Then I decided, okay, when I do a PhD, I just wanted to continue with this aspect on one particular aspect that I had not covered in my dissertation. During my dissertation days, I realized that one of the major problem that leads to this groundwater exploitation is the role of subsidies.
Okay.
Subsidies are provided particularly in case of irrigation sector, wherein the farmers are helped. It's a help, right? It's a form of a incentive or help by the state to access these water resources for their better economic development in the agriculture sector. So there are subsidies for credit-based subsidies. There are subsidies for power, then energy. Then you have fertilizer subsidy. You have different types of subsidies that are related in agriculture. And I found that there are a lot of studies which are undertaken by the political ecologist, development scientist, regarding the role of subsidies in groundwater exploitation. But no one has looked into from a legal dimension. But I just wanted to see, when you are saying that it is a right, and of course in drinking water, even though that subsidy is not explicitly visible, there's a hidden aspect of subsidy. That's why the people benefit at a very less rate, right? So what is that subsidy playing here? What's the role that subsidy is playing? Acknowledging that it is a policy framework to water in the context of drinking water sector, or is it contributing actually to realize the right to food through water for food? So because in Indian context, subsistence farming is too much, right, rather than this high scale farming.
Even in Nepal's context, it's the same. Like subsistence farming contributes to a lot of.
So it was a challenge a little bit in the beginning when I started my PhD. How can I bring this legal element here? So my PhD thesis is some sort of a social legal approach, but I try to bring some interdisciplinary approach also, like learning from the aspects of development studies, political economics, to reflect on what changes we could bring to a legal situation or legal regulation. So I found that the current regulatory pattern is not sufficient to address this equity issue. And for me, then when I searched about what could I use for a framework, water justice was something that struck me, because I have to tweak it, I have to customize it in Indian context. But water justice can be the major framework that could lead me to help me get an answer for this. So and another reason why I chose water was, the place where I hail from, we never faced any water issues. But at the same time, there's another place which I came across. This is Plachimada, in the same state where water was an issue, right? So why, when you have plenty of water around you, again, but the problem of access and allocation is an important aspect. So I just wanted to explore this ambiguous situation that led me.
Same state.
Same state,
we have
right?
Call as a developed state. We have all the social aspects and education and everything there. So can you throw some light on this? Because our theme for this ESDR is decolonizing law and justice and embracing diverse perspectives of international law, including climate justice. So we want to focus on climate justice because that's a pertinent issue that we need to focus on whenever we talk about decolonizing also, because there's a north-south divide even in the climate debates that you talked about. So can you just focus on how important is climate justice in the present era, so that our listeners will gain from that, and also the north-south divide that you focused in your class, and how it is affecting to give climate justice, like universally, if we say?
Yeah, see, like you said, climate justice is something a very important aspect that we should look into. My understanding is that whenever we discuss about climate change discourse, basically it drives from the idea of all this UNFFC and the related protocols and other developments, right? Wherein the states have very crucial role to play. But what are the concerns of the people who are impacted by climate change, right? Shouldn't they require justice?
Yeah.
And who is responsible for the harm that they face? At that, there's always an ambiguity, because when you look into this climate change discourse, we are discussing climate change discourse at a particular level, like a threshold level. But those at the threshold level, those people who are actually discussing this climate change, are they the actual victims of climate change? No. It's the normal people or the poor people or the lower level people who are actually facing it. Their rights and concerns should also be addressed. So in that context, climate change, climate justice, from the aspect of not about the victim, but it would also be the persons who are affected by them and who are less contributor to this, should receive mainstream attention. But when you discuss this climate justice, from my research experience, I think you should relate it to an aspect of water justice also, because water is something that is essential, and that is one of the sector which is very crucially impacted by the climate change. You can see floods or droughts. It has a common element of water, right? So we have never received, or we haven't given that much attention to this aspect of linking climate justice and water justice. So in my research right now, I'm trying to link how climate justice can be linked to water justice or the other way around. And with regard to the north-south divide also, I feel even in the negotiation rounds or any international level attention discourse, the South's perspective hasn't received that much attention to that extent which it should have received, right? Like we discussed in the class also, even if you say clean development mechanism or emission trading, of course, it can be between the developed countries, but in case of clean development mechanism, or let's say Paris Agreement, the nationally determined contributions, even though to an extent they give that flexibility to the developing South, but you see the example that we discussed about this solar panel issue that US raised with respect to Make in India policy and the related trade related aspects. So the question always is the concern of the developing South to combat, mitigate, or adapt to the climate change by themselves, getting that much attention in the mainstream legal discourse or let's say climate discourse. So there you need more, say let's say global South perspective to climate justice. That's what I think. Not only in perspective of drafting the climate based treaties and other related international documents, but also at the ground level, the problems being diverse, that should also get adequate attention so as to ensure climate justice in an overwhelming manner.
Yeah, that is the most pressing issue
Yes.
in the present context. Thank you, Gayatri, so much. I hope you enjoyed teaching in
Yes,
Kathmandu
yes.
School of Law in the 16th ESDR. And thank you so much for coming so far away from Bangalore and sharing your immense knowledge in international environmental law and connecting it to water justice and climate justice aspects, especially our focus that is decolonizing law and justice. You hit the bullseye by talking about the global north and global south divide in the climate negotiations also. Thank you, Gayatri, so much for coming.
Thank you.